1-minute warning. I call to order City Council meeting for April 10th, 2019. And the first item of business is the Pledge of Allegiance, will be led by Clint Hutchings.
Audience, please rise and follow me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Okay, the first item on the workshop is a review of the proposed budget for 2019-2020. Denise Stack, excuse me.
This will be the first time I use your clicker, so forgive me if I turn it off or something. Thank you for taking the time this evening to go over a preliminary budget review. I'm going to just kind of let you know where we are right now in the budget process, what we know so far, and ask you some questions. I'd like some feedback before we go much further into this process. So if you wouldn't mind, we'll go from there. So first of all, where are we in the process? We have completed our revenue projections and have tested them. I've done that myself, tested them, and adjusted some of them as I saw fit. I compared them over 3 years using historical trends over 3 years and then knowing what I know going forward. So it wasn't just, oh, let's look at the budget last year. It was, let's actually look at what our actual collections were over that time period. We have reviewed all the personnel costs, and a complete review has been done with that. We're going to go over those quite a bit tonight. We've completed and received the operational budgets from the departments. We've entered them into the budget. But at this point, we are seeing that we need some adjustments to be made, and so we'll be meeting with department directors over the next few days and reviewing all of those operational budgets. Following that review, we'll prepare the budget document that will come to you. It will look probably very different than what you've seen in the past. Hopefully it'll be a little easier for you to digest and ask questions on, and we'll provide you with some detailed information as well. And then following that, we'll do the council review. So I have quite a few questions about how we want to manage that process. Our budget approach. So first of all, like I told you, revenues were tested using a 3-year historical trend, and then we applied a conservative approach. So while I might see sales tax increase 4.5% or 7% over the last 2 or 3 years, I'm not going to be that aggressive at going after that full 7% and then having us not have it come in like that. So pretty much we used sales tax as for instance, we went with a 2 or 2.5%. So real conservative, making sure that it comes in on target, but still being progressive enough to say that we are going to have growth because we're not stagnant. Our service levels throughout the departments will be maintained at the same levels until such time as we can get the budget fully funded. We have dedicated one-time funds to one-time expenditures, knowing that we don't want to increase any operational expense based on something that's not going to come in annually. We've targeted a fund balance of 20%. Last year, it was right about 22%. So we may be using a portion of that and bringing that down this year. But when you think about 20%, that's really only 73 days of reserves. So should there be an economic change of some sort, That's not very much time for us to respond, so I think that's a pretty responsible number. And then just kind of knowing the philosophy of what has been done in the past is a little different than what the city manager and Corbin and I have all experienced. And that is that previous budgets here have always assumed a budget savings, in that departments budgeted assuming that they would never spend their budgets. And in doing so, we feel like we want to bring that into a little more balanced approach and try and get expenditures to come as close to revenues as possible. We don't believe that we can probably get there all the way this year. We're going to attempt as much as possible, but we believe over the next 2 years as we work together in developing a budget process that this can be accomplished. So let's talk a little bit about the new general fund revenue that is going to be shown in your budget. First of all, we want you to know that we did not assume any inflationary rate increases. No rate increase in a property tax, no rate increase in any other rates that had not been adopted previously in the consolidated fee study. The one fee that you did increase last year was the licensing fee, and so that will be showing that growth over the next year as licenses come up for renewal. And property tax new growth, we took, again, a conservative approach and went with 1.5% growth. That would be new properties that are coming online and hitting our tax rolls. And we believe that'll bring in about $200,000. And then sales tax, as I spoke before, is about 2.4%, and that'll bring in about $500,000. So really, we were looking at $845,000 of new revenue that would be ongoing revenue for the city. What we had as new revenue as well that we'll show in your budgets is also some revenues that are restricted. The first one is sales tax, and the city has previously treated a portion of the sales tax revenue as going straight to debt service. I would like to recognize it as revenue and then show the expense for debt service. So I'm just reclassifying. It's not new revenue. It will just show up looking like we have more revenue than we've had in the past, but it is nothing new. It will also show the expense increase. And then the next item is actually the dedicated sales tax increase that went through with Salt Lake County last year. They've been collecting that sales tax now for 9 months. As of July 1st, that will be a sales tax that is now dedicated to the cities to take care of transportation needs. And the estimate for West Jordan is $1.7 million.
Need to interrupt you just a moment. We've got a couple of questions from council members. Start with Councilmember Burton.
Of course.
Thank you. So I want to go back to when you mentioned how we had a little extra in each of the department's budgets, and you wanted to tighten that up because we were expecting them to not spend all of it. Mm-hmm. Isn't part of the reason for that because they budget for bad scenarios, and if they are somehow able to keep that bad scenario from happening, they don't spend as much, and so we know that every department isn't going to have a real bad thing. So are we going to just take out the risk portion and not be able to budget for the unknown bad that may arise? Is that your plan, or what is? How do you tighten that up?
Right, that's what we're going to talk about with the department heads, and so we haven't had those discussions yet. We've just gotten to the point where we're going, okay, revenues to expenditures, and our first blush through, we were about 10% in excess of our revenues, and that's pretty high, in my opinion. So, or in essence, that we would be spending half of our reserves in the current year budget if there were a scenario where everybody spent all of their dollars. And that's a little challenging there. So we're going to meet with them, and we would like to talk about the scenarios. So salt, right? You don't know if you're going to have a high salt year or a low salt year. An emergency operation of some sort. You don't know if you're going to have a lot of overtime or no overtime. I mean, look at Salt Lake City right now with 15 police officers on administrative leave. So we need to be prepared for those, and reserves are available for those.
And we don't know how many water main breaks we'll have.
Right. So utilities are totally different. This one is really about the general fund at this point. But we're going to meet with our department directors and go over their historical spending and then what their actual needs are, and then see what we can do to kind of come a little more into balance. A little less than 10% is what we're hoping. So we're hoping to come halfway, if possible. But again, we will not strip our departments from their services. We want them to be able to do their jobs and do their jobs well.
So will we maybe have a separate
Contingency?
item? Right, they can go to any department?
Sure,
something like
we
that,
can
perhaps,
certainly do that.
instead?
And that's in one of your budget policies as well. You have that there'll be a contingency fund, and that in the current, these policies are gonna need to be updated, because I just read them today and went, these are really out of date. But they say that the city manager has the ability to spend 50% of the contingency, up to $10,000 without council approval, kind of thing. So I think those need to be updated, but contingencies certainly should be budgeted for those kinds of emergencies and could be transferred to a department in case of need.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Councilmember Anderson.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Denise. This is wonderful to have a fresh set of eyes look at our budget. And I just wanted to see a couple things. You'd mentioned that you had looked at some revenue trends, and I wanted to see if you'd look at specifically the franchise tax trends. I've kind of noticed that they've decreased a little bit as people make changes in how they view their television and how they make
Absolutely.
phone calls.
Yeah.
And then also a couple things. The legislature may have a special session later this year to kind of revamp the sales tax structure. They attempted that during the session. And so have you had, I know they haven't come up with anything, but I mean, you've got some contingencies in place, because if I remember from David, I think you had mentioned that if that had passed, there would be 7 or 8% decrease in sales tax revenue, because we're heavier in sales than we are in service.
Sure.
And so you've got some contingencies in case that happens and they meet here in the next month or two and pass something that starts July 1?
I know that one of the things that the legislature has said, and yes, there's definite risk in that, is that they are going to be holding a portion of that sales tax revenue as a hold harmless bank, so to speak, to see what the net effect is on the cities, and that then they would distribute to the cities. So I experienced this when they did the sales tax distribution based on population years ago. We went through the same process. And what they did was they did a hold harmless clause. So they put extra monies into a pool and then distributed to the cities so that there was a net effect of no loss at that time. It's short-lived, so at least it would give us time to react to that. But yes, I believe that the legislature has something in place to be a safety net for the cities.
Okay, and then my last comment is obviously you're aware that we have a change in form of government coming mid-budget cycle, so that probably presents some different challenges.
We've got a slide on that in just a few minutes.
Okay, I'm ahead
Perfect.
of myself. So that's
You're
all
ahead
I
of
have.
yourself. So as far as franchise taxes go, telecom franchise tax is coming down, and it's coming down pretty quick. It just is. People are getting rid of their landlines and they're going to cell phones. And while we would imagine that there's more cell phones out there than we're getting rid of landlines, because I don't know, there's like 7 cell phones at my house and 1 landline used to be. But it just seems like those telecom franchise taxes are just coming down pretty quickly. So we did estimate those as coming down. Utility franchise taxes are pretty much staying stable for the most part. And cable franchise taxes are just delayed revenue, but pretty much are stable as well. So
Okay.
we did look at those. Thank you for asking.
All right.
Are there any other questions so
That's
far?
all I have, Mayor.
Councilmember McConaughey.
Thank you, Mayor. A couple things real quick. First of all, thank you for trying to get department expenditures and their budget more lined up. I know in the past we've looked in, especially with employee compensation, because we know there's always going to be turnover, but the initial budget numbers say, okay, well, we're going to budget this at 100%, even though we know right now there's 4 openings and there's no conceivable way that we could possibly spend all of that because of those openings that just naturally happen. A lot of times it's easy for the council to fall back and say, well, we know there's a little bit of wiggle room in there. So we know there's some, that's just not a good way to do it. So thank you for trying to get some of that out. The other thing you brought up is including the debt service. Thank you. That has been a point of contention for a number of years now, wanting to see everything coming in and everything going out, where that had just been left out. The other piece that I would ask, if maybe it's on an addendum or something like that, but someplace where it clearly shows these are the different bonds, these are the total amount that's outstanding, and these are the payments, so that we can look and say, okay, well, this is going on for another 2 years, and this is when it matures, because as we discuss capital projects.
It's already done.
Sometimes it's, okay, perfect. It's just frustrating when we're discussing capital projects and adjusting rates, user rates in perpetuity for something that really could be fixed in a year. So, thank you. And you already touched on one contingency pool instead of one for every department, so I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
So yes, your budget book will include a debt service schedule in there and each of the bonds that are outstanding. So that's exactly what you're going to get in your budget book. Thanks. It's kind of nice to hear that you're kind of ahead of me too. All right, so personnel changes. We have good news. This is the first of good news. So we went out to RFP for our insurance benefits as an entire package. So everything went out, not just one thing. And our medical insurance rate renewal came in with a decreased premium. I know, everybody can fall off their chair now because, yeah, Corbin about passed out, I think, at the meeting, of 10%. So that's a success story in many ways. First of all, you have an HR director that's very proactive and working with GBS. You have a broker that's very proactive at lobbying for our city to get good benefits that are equal to what we currently have. But also it's a tribute to the high deductible plan success that the city has had in converting a lot of your employees over into that high deductible. You have a very strong success rate with that, and that has to do with communication to your employees and education, so good job on that. And again, also, it has to do with your employees being responsible with their health care, and that's a huge deal as well. So all of that together brought in that $600,000 for all the funds. $538,000 will be in the general fund. So that's a premium decrease and a decrease to the budget, which actually will help us fund a lot of the other things that are going on within the city. Our merit program is funded in the current budget that we're proposing, and that will mean $629,000 for the entire city or $567,000 for employees in the general fund. So the difference between those two columns is that includes all the utility funds and everybody else, and the far column is just the general fund employees. The third item is the career ladder, which means, I had someone ask me today, what's that mean? That means like building inspector 1 to building inspector 2, or water tech 1 to water tech 2. So it's that they're advanced in their career and certifications. That will equal $188,000 or $142,000 in the general fund. And then market adjustments. The HR group goes out and does a market adjustment for 1/3 of the city every year. So every 3 years, every position's looked at and adjusted to market. So there were some market adjustments this year in some of the positions. Court clerks were some, police records techs were some that I remember. They were $142,000. This is an odd year as well. So this year, there are 2 additional work days that are going to hit the calendar. So when you calculate salaries, they have to be calculated based on 2,096 hours this year, not 2,080 hours. So that will increase, and it's just the way the calendar hits, but it will increase your wages. And sometimes if you're fully staffed, that can really make a difference. So we're gonna budget for that, knowing that it likely will have some vacancies, they'll take up that capacity, but we'll see where that comes in. The next item is leave buyout. So you have a really good program here, and I've seen a lot of cities run the same program to minimize the liability of leave time that's on the books. So this is a sick time liability management program, but it's also a benefit to your employees so that they don't take time off and services are decreased or overtime is paid while they're out sick. So if they're not really sick, they're using it more as personal time. Mayor.
Councilmember Conahay.
Thank you, Mayor. Quick question going back to the
2 extra days?
No, not the 2 extra days. Going back a little before that. For the medical insurance rate decrease, please forgive me, I didn't get a chance to double check. I didn't think about this before the meeting, but with our HSA program, we have an employer match with that, right?
Uh-huh.
Do we do that period by period? Or do we do it like in bulk?
No, we do, well, it depends on when you do it. So so like if I were to participate. No, you're fine.
I'm asking a question that's kind of leading down the wrong way. I guess what I want to say is if we've seen a benefit and a decrease in the premiums, I'm just 1 of 7, but I would like to see if there's options that we could take with the HSA and maybe change the amount that we're funding, maybe bump that up a little bit, or at a minimum change, if we're doing it, like every period, we have a certain match that goes in with the employee portion. If we could pre-fund it a little bit better, and at a minimum, like maybe quarterly, so at the first of each quarter, you're getting 3 months worth of deposits, or ideally, like once in July and then once in January, just because I know for some of the hourly, when we.
Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah. So
You have a
if we
medical
have some
expense up
savings
front.
there, I'm just one of 7, but I would love to look at options for the HSA with the new budget year to help make things a little easier.
Okay.
Thank you.
We'll look at that, thank you. And that leave buyout is 3 paid leave days, or it's 25% of their leave bank, whatever they accrued the prior year and didn't use. So if they didn't use their leave time, they can get paid out for a portion of it, so that that bank doesn't increase, and it's also an incentive for them to not take sick time without being really sick. So the changes in the general fund, there's $482,000 of additional personnel expense just using those. And that's excluding things that we're still in discussions about, which is retirement buyouts, which is when a person retires and we need to pay out all of their leave time out of the bank. Sometimes that will hit the budget pretty hard. And then the cost of living adjustments, we're still looking and watching the market to see where that's going to come in at. We haven't landed on a firm number yet. Any questions about that? Okay, a personnel analysis. This will just show you kind of where everybody is. There's a total of 526 employees in the budget. That doesn't include labor, seasonal labor, or interns. The full-time, there's 498 permanent employees and 28 part-time employees. 326 of the 498 are eligible for merit. And the career ladder and market adjustment were 78 per 8 employees, just so you know kind of how that affects everybody. So of that, 18% of our workforce right now is topped out in their ranges. All right, so you just asked about the change of government costs. So here's the expense that we have come up with. The following includes the salary and fully loaded benefits for 50% of the year for the 2 positions that we believe we need to add. The first is to add a full-time mayor. It was added at 50%. The salary we believe will be about $125,000 a year, so half of that would be about $64,000 after we add those extra 2 days in. And then benefits fully loaded for half the year are about $26,000. So, and again, we're just estimating. This isn't that we've made any decision or any decisions are made, because I think that's a discussion that needs to be had by the council. But we wanted a placeholder in there of some sort. The council office director position will also need to be added to support the council. And that's $77,000. And I missed the part-time, or not the part-time, but the at-large extra council member. That's another $20,000. So I apologize. I should have added that and I missed it. So this will actually be $187,000 by the time we're done. Questions?
Councilmember Jacob.
Yeah, just a quick question on that. We already have 7 council members, and one of them's gonna get paid a lot less next year, the one in the middle. If we're adding a whole nother mayor position, the current mayor position is the 3rd at-large council member. That's $60,000 less.
True, but the mayor was guaranteed 4 years of salary.
Oh, this mayor was.
This mayor was. So my assumption is that he will
take it though. If
he will get paid no matter what.
Okay,
So, but I can't assume the election
That's
outcome.
a good point. Okay.
So,
Thank you.
yeah. Any other
Councilmember
questions?
McConaughey.
Thank you, Mayor. So quick clarification, I thought by ordinance, the salary of the mayor was at something like $89,900 already.
It is at $89,500. We are assuming, because this mayor would have to be full-time and in the office on a day-to-day basis, that it would be similar to mayors in a strong mayor form of government as other cities that have that same form. So we tested, this is pretty much where we came up with the number. We kind of tested the other mayors in Provo and Murray and all the other cities and kind of came up with an average. Again, that is a discussion for you to have, so I'm not landing on anything. I just put a placeholder in.
Okay. Can we get that on the agenda for discussion in the next, I would say within the next month?
I think it probably needs to be discovered before anyone files, because they need to know what would they get paid to do the job.
I know we won't have a full council at the next meeting, so the first meeting in May, so that would be about a month out.
We'll ask Mr. Bricky if he'll make sure that's on the agenda for the first meeting in May.
I will do that for the first of, realistically, May, or is it April 24th?
April 24th, there won't be a full council here, so the first meeting.
That was why I wondered if the April 24th was still desirable, even though I think you're going to be missing 2 council members.
The first meeting in May is what we would like you to do.
Sorry, the first one in May. May 4th. Thank you, Ms. Briggs.
Councilmember Whitelock.
I didn't see anything on that slide for legal counsel for the council, and I'm still going to be pushing for that. So just so you know, you may need to budget for that if I.
So an additional attorney? Is that what you're kind of looking at?
At least one on retainer,
Okay.
yeah.
And Councilmember Anderson.
Yeah, I just, the filing for all the positions, including the mayor, is the first week of June. So the 1st of May, the first meeting in May doesn't give a lot of time if we're not in a position, if we're gonna have a lot of dialogue over it. So. This is a workshop. This is a workshop.
Meeting on a different night to discuss.
So I think we as a council just need to be sensitive that people that are filing to run for offices will be doing that the first week of June. And so all the expectations need to be defined prior to that time. So that's really my only comment and suggestion. We can make it easy and just leave it at 90. Thank you.
Okay, so I've said plenty, so I'm going to say less and I'm going to ask more. Our first question is how, once we get you the budget book and the budget document, how would you like to go over the budget details? Would you like to do that together in this kind of a session? But it's probably going to take much longer than half an hour. Would you like to do that in small groups of 2 or 3 of you together with me? Chad's like, no. Or individually, where you can ask individual questions and I can explain the budget to you. I would be happy to do whatever council would like to have done.
Councilmember McConaughey.
Thank you, Mayor. So this will be my 8th time going through the budget process. The approach I've seen that I like the best is when we have 3 or 4 separate workshops scheduled just to go through the budget. We all meet together down in the community room and just kind of all talk through. We have the information prior so we can put our questions together prior and then talk it all out. I don't like the small groups. I really don't like how it was done last year. Last year I think was the worst in my mind because you had small groups that each had a portion of the budget, and then outside of those 3, people didn't have an opportunity to weigh in or say what their priorities were. So it wasn't really the council's budget. I really do not like last year. I do like the idea of all of us being able to at least hear what each other's priorities are and being able to do that. Personal preference as far as when those meetings happen, I'd like to try and encourage it to be on the same week as City Council. I know, at least for myself, with my regular work obligations, the off weeks are fully packed and it makes it impossible on those off weeks are very, very difficult. So the other thing is having them scheduled well in advance, trying to say, well, we're going to do something 2-3 weeks out. My travel arrangements usually go 3-4 months out in advance. So the sooner we could get those scheduled, the better. And then as far as department directors reviewing their own, I don't really have a huge concern one way or another on that. Whatever, I would defer to you. So that's my opinion. Thank you.
Councilmember Whitelock.
I don't feel like last year's was an effective way to do our budget either. I think we need to meet together, but I'm okay with the opposite week, and I have a lot of things going on in my life, so I would like those to get scheduled soon as well. But I think it needs to be 1, maybe 2 meetings, but they need to have enough time for us to have adequate discussion, because a half-hour work meeting, we're out of time already.
Denise, is there a specific date that the budget has to be presented back to council for approval? And what is that date?
So you're going to accept the tentative budget, which would not require any council discussion. It's the city manager's budget coming to you the first meeting in May. And then following that, it needs to be adopted by the last meeting in June. So you have, those 4 meetings that you might be able to do that. but I would strongly suggest that there be blocks of time. So I'm thinking at least like a 2-hour block of time or more, a couple of times. So if we could do a half-day work session, feed you lunch and be here till 5, or if you want to do it would be an off meeting night if we were going to do an entire after 5 o'clock meeting.
Councilmember McConaughey.
Thank you, Mayor. I think the ones we had done, I think we were usually 2 to 3 hours. When we had the 3 to 4 separate work sessions, 2 to 3 hours. Any more than that, people tend to get burned out. The other thing that we did a number of years ago that was really nice is we looked at the enterprise funds separate first, so that we could have that baseline that was all set, ready to go. Those numbers could just be rolled in with the rest of the budget. I don't think it's the last 3 years or so. I know we've had issues with enterprise funds. 1 year being left out altogether. I'll throw that out there. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, so we've discovered that we want to meet together. We discovered we probably need 2 sessions of 2 hours each at least. Maybe 3 or 4. Maybe. How about we do 3 and then see where we are? I'm pretty good at summarizing, and I think that the budget document should be pretty easy for you to read. So I think that should be half the battle. And we just need to discover a time or a day that is going to work. So if we said that we want to do during the week, during the regular meeting week, is there a possibility of doing during the day, or would you like to do another night session on the same week that you also have council meeting?
Councilmember McConaughey.
Thank you, Mayor. Thursday nights would work the best for me.
Thursdays? Councilmember Whitelaw?
I would ask that either Corbin or somebody under David's direction send out some kind of a little poll to see when most of us are available.
That'd be great.
We'll send it to the 7 of you, and we can have a date, a day of the week, and a time during the day. And if you could just fill it out and let you all know exactly what it is.
Survey monkey or something.
Survey monkey. Okay. Thank you for your time. You will have a budget book to you very soon, and we'll begin discussions then. So I appreciate the opportunity to serve. Thanks.
Thank you very much. We'll now move to citizen comments. There are 2 opportunities this evening for citizens to speak. If you're to discuss an issue that's something that's on the consent calendar or a business item, now is the time. There's 1 public hearing item that can be addressed. And there's a reminder that you have 3 minutes to come to the microphone and express your feelings. So I'll start with those that have signed up. So Stephen Jones.
Mayor, Council, appreciate being here. Steve Jones, 3234 West, 6920 South. You know, it's interesting we're talking about budgets because that was kind of what was on my mind tonight. I was reading some articles over the week and had to do with Salt Lake City. And one of the things that kind of grinded on me a little bit was the fact that they have a tendency to take money that's, for lack of a better example, would be transportation. To me, I look at what pays into transportation, and then I would look at what gets taken out of it. And in other words, we rob Peter to pay Paul. We take out to take money out of there to use for activities that has no revenue source. I would remind our council that everything that we do should have a revenue source. The general fund is not a revenue source. That means we should be able to look at it and say, me as a constituent is being taxed for a certain thing. That's what that money goes for. And I see it through our state legislatures, and they have a tendency to want to tax my soda pop so they can throw it into the general fund to use however they want. To me, that's wrong. That's dishonest. It's not your job to worry about my health or what I'm doing. It's your job to provide me with services. And if that service can't be taken to a revenue source, then it's not yours to be provided. I look at what they're suffering with now down in Salt Lake, having to come up with a great big bond to repair their roads because they robbed out of the transportation, to limit lanes and handle their political correct world. I also look at where they rob money out of our first responders, and now they're upset because their first responders don't have the adequate funds to keep their guys employed, and they're going to other cities. We should never be robbing something to pay for something. We should have a revenue source. Thank you.
Thank you. I have no others that have signed up, so is there anyone else in the audience that would like to address City Council this evening? Please come to the microphone.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and City Council. My name is Cindy DeLeo, and I am with the Salt Lake County Aging and Adult Services Department, and I am requesting that we receive a waiver for the rental of the pavilion at the Veterans Memorial Park for our National Senior Health and Fitness event that we hold annually. It's on the last Wednesday of each month, and this will be the third year that we've had this event at the Veridian Event Center, where we provide lunch for our seniors, and we would like the pavilion to keep our seniors out of the sun, to keep them safe. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address council this evening? Seeing none, I will close the citizen comments and move to presentations. The Police Department employees, Chandra Edmonds and badge pinning, and Fire Department employees Philip Bingham, Chris Maxfield, and Chris Trevino badge pinning. So let's start with the Police Department.
Mayor, that should have been stricken off. We only had one tonight, so we're going to wait until we've got a couple more. Fire Department gets the whole night.
Fire Department, you're up.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. We're excited to be here. Just for future reference as well, we have coordinated with the Police Department and would like to work with them and have these badge pinning ceremonies jointly in the future. We're just trying to get on the same schedule. Hopefully I'm not out of place in saying this, but I am extremely grateful and appreciative of Ms. Steck and her efforts. I was really impressed with the grasp that she has on the budget already in such a short amount of time that she's been here. And as a staff member, I can't speak for all the staff, but I would say she's been very helpful to us. So that was a great hire. That being said, we are excited to be here tonight to recognize a few of our great fire department employees as well. We've had some recent promotions and would like to invite those individuals to come up, as well as with their spouses who are going to pin those badges. So if I could have Deputy Chief Chris Trevino come forward with his wife Stephanie.
I would like to invite the council members to come and stand down here too. So.
All right. We'll have you stand right here for now. While you guys are taking your spots there, Chris Trevino, he began his career in the fire service in West Jordan in 2003. When he was hired as a paramedic firefighter. Since that time, he has operated in many different capacities within the department, including paramedic, training specialist, captain, and battalion chief, along with participating in many other committees. He holds a bachelor's degree in emergency services management from Utah Valley University. And his drive, like so many others in this business, is to serve and make a difference in the lives of others. I think many of you have had the opportunity to work with him for a few months when he was the interim chief, and I think you can all agree that he very much has a sincere desire to please and to serve others. It's evident. Tonight he will be pinned by his beautiful wife Stephanie, and the rest of his family is in attendance as well. His children Andrew, Jane, Jack, and Jet, who are a great support to him in his career. So. Let's clap. If I could have Chris Maxfield, Battalion Chief Chris Maxfield, come up as well, with his wife, Angie, who will be pinning his badge. Chris has served nearly 20 years with the West Jordan Fire Department. During his time here, he has served as a firefighter, engineer, as well as training and suppression captain. He is a State of Utah designated fire officer, graduate of the University of Utah's Leadership Series, and the National Fire Academy's Managing Officer Program. He holds a Bachelor of Science degree from Utah Valley University and will complete a Master of Public Administration this summer from Southern Utah University. So with that, we will give this badge to his wife, Angie. What's that? That's good. Turn it down. And Chief Maxfield is actually assigned, that's created a lot of confusion in the fire department, as you can imagine. Battalion chiefs are referred to as chief as well, so there's a couple Chief Maxfields, but he's over the training division in our department right now and oversees all the specialty assignments, heavy rescue and things like that, so great asset for us. And then if I could have Philip Bingham come up, Captain Philip Bingham, and his wife, Cammie. Philip Bingham has worked for the West Jordan Fire Department since September of 2000. During his time here, he has held the positions of firefighter, engineer, and paramedic. He's a member of our heavy rescue team and has helped develop the program into what it is today. Some of his accomplishments include graduating with a Bachelor of Science degree in Emergency Services Administration, magna cum laude, and finishing top of the UVU Paramedic Class 26. He lives in Spanish Fork with his wife, Cammie, and has 2 children, a son named Austin, age 18, and a daughter named Riley, age 15. And when he's not at work, he enjoys mountain biking, hiking, and spending time with family and friends. And that's it. And again, thank you for allowing us just a little bit of time tonight to recognize these great individuals and their accomplishments. I have great confidence in their ability as leaders in the department as well as in the community. So we're really excited. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief, and thank you all the firefighters. Next item of business is communications. So first is a city manager staff reports. So Mr. Bricky.
Thank you, Mayor. At this time, there are no messages or reports to be provided. Thank you for asking.
Well, there is one that Corbin's going to report on.
I'm sorry?
I think he forgot, didn't he?
We're on suspense.
Let's just give him a minute here and come back.
We tend to get going a lot of different directions and forget. I want to report on a banquet we went to. The mayor and I were able to attend yesterday. We were there to honor the city, its work, and specifically the work of Ty Nielsen, our city arborist, in obtaining Tree City USA designation. We did get these nice stickers. This is our 23rd year consecutive for being Tree City USA. We have at our entrance to our city a sign, a big street sign that says we are Tree City USA, and we'll be adding these to those street signs here shortly.
Thank you. So we'll now move to city council comments and start with Councilmember Burton.
Thank you, Mayor. This past week has been really good for me. So on Monday, April 1st, I attended the Maxwell Dance Studios ribbon cutting. They're located right here on 90th South over by the Reams grocery store. And then on Tuesday, April 2nd, Hawthorne Elementary came here and I got to help take them on a tour of City Hall. So all the city staff, I'm sure, that was here in the building got to hear them tour in the building. They were well heard. And they got to meet the mayor and talk with him for a few minutes. Also on Tuesday, April 2nd, I attended South Jordan City Council meeting. And I was invited to go to that because there was a meeting discussing rezoning some property over by Salt Lake Community College, which has been rezoned for some senior multifamily housing. That'll happen on the South Jordan side of that property. And there's some residents that live on the West Jordan side near there who were anxious about that. And I can tell you they had a full house and their meeting didn't end till midnight. I can't imagine what that would be like. And on Thursday, April 4th, I attended the Jordan River Commission. And one of the things that was talked about in the Jordan River Commission, and it was also, I followed up with the workshop that happened in Bluffdale yesterday on Tuesday, April 9th. There's a master plan project that the county is working on that covers the Jordan River throughout the county. And it talks about different places where you can get in the river, and if you do, where you need to get out and port around, and some places you should not get in the river, and some places you should avoid. And there's a couple of those places that are noted in West Jordan. There's also a opportunity for us to share with them what we like to see done different on the parts of the river that are in West Jordan. So I have provided one of these for each council member. There's another meeting tomorrow night in West Valley if you have some time to go to that. If not, I brought this for you so you could at least read through that and get some ideas and then share that with the county. So I would encourage you to take a few minutes and do that, since the Jordan River is a fantastic thing. It's part of our river and we ought to make the best use of it as we can. On Monday morning, this is kind of a personal thing, the Salt Lake County Library did a groundbreaking for a new library in Kearns, because they're tearing the old library down in Kearns, which is across the street from the elementary school I attended. And that library was built the year before I started going to elementary school. And somehow they think that's too old, they need to replace it. I hope someone has got that idea with me as well. But that was a great event to happen, that groundbreaking there. Also on Monday, I attended a ribbon cutting for the College Hunks Hauling Junk and Moving. They are a business. If you have some junk, they'll haul and move that for you, and they also do moving for you. Then Tuesday, I attended the AMC, Association of Municipal Councils, and their Wasatch Front Regional Council was presenting and teaching the different cities on how we can use Wasatch Front Regional Council to help us. And I'm happy to say that West Jordan City is very good at using Wasatch Front Regional Council. So our accolades go out to our staff on taking advantage of that fantastic resource, and that's who helps us with lots of our transportation needs. Also, on Tuesday, yesterday, I attended the Over the River and Through the Woods that the play that is being over at the Pioneer Hall. Thank you. And that was fantastic. I enjoyed that last night. This morning, I attended the Active Transportation Committee that was held at Wasatch Front Regional Council, and I'm going to follow that up in a minute as I talk about a little bit more about my event when I went to the biking summit. And the last thing I want to mention is Comcast Cares Day is coming up on May 4th. If you haven't signed up for Comcast Cares Day for May 4th yet, I would encourage you all to do that. That's an opportunity where you get a free breakfast, a free lunch, a free t-shirt, and you provide service in the city of West Jordan. And Comcast donates money back to West Jordan according to how many hours of volunteers we get. So the more volunteers we get, the more revenue we get back from Comcast. So that's a great opportunity for us there. So take a look at that. Okay, I'm gonna try and keep my comments on down to 2 minutes about the Viking Summit. The Viking Summit happened in Lehigh at Thanksgiving Point, and that was sponsored by Wasatch Front Regional Council and put on by Bike Utah. And I was gonna show some pictures, but to save time, I'm not going to, but if you want me to send you some pictures afterwards, I would be happy to share those with you. But one of the cool things that happened at that summit that I learned about is there's an organization called AASHTO. I'm not gonna try and make that sound out, but it's called the American Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials. That's a national organization of which every state is a part, and we are a part. In fact, their president is Carlos, who is the executive director of UDOT, is the president of this organization. And in this organization, they have found additional ways to include active transportation in our transportation corridors. And so they gave us a sneak preview of different avenues and ways we can do that. And I went through those pictures, and there's some fun and some creative ideas of ways we can do that and help keep traffic going, because the idea about active transportation is not to get in the way of regular traffic, but to let regular traffic do its thing and have active transportation not get in the way. Also learned in there that UDOT has a policy to include active transportation every time, a goal to include active transportation every time they do a project. However, that goal has been more of a guideline than a goal in the past, but they have committed this year to add that up to a stronger one, largely because of Senate Bill, I can't remember, 65 or something like that. It's going to require active transportation to be included in every scope of road that we do now. And there has been money that the legislators have set aside for active transportation. So we need to include that in our goal, and there's money there to go with that, so it won't cost us extra. Also, UDOT is going to do a better job, according to them, on creating active transportation paths through their construction areas. For example, when they did the Bangetter work on 90th South, when I had to go past there, I had to join in with regular traffic, and sometimes that would slow traffic down on a bicycle, and I'd go back in the bike lanes afterwards. However, when they did the Bangetter work on Redwood Road, they actually made a route, and it wasn't where the same traffic went, and it was diverted quite a ways. It was safer for the bicyclists and didn't slow the regular traffic down because they could still do their thing. So those are some of the highlights that happened to that. And if you want more information, please see me. I have lots more I'd love to share with you and a few photos. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember Anderson.
Thank you, Mayor. The only thing I wanted to report on was just kind of a public thank you to Brian Clegg. I've had an email from one of our users of the soccer complex, and actually I've had a lot of emails from residents this past week, so it's been nice to be able to do more service. But specifically, there was a communication given to the league that was kind of very short, single sentence, and I got with Brian, and he was able to respond back and explain the policy and explain in a very professional way. I thought it made the city look very good, it made our staff look good. So I just want to publicly thank Brian for being able to respond to that resident and the concern about using the soccer fields for practices. And that's the primary thing. Again, I'm going to also bring up the odor webpage that we have, that we're monitoring certain odors that traverse the city, and keep that active. Every time I am told there's a smell, either via text or seeing it on social media, I'm out driving the industrial area, seeing who's open, what steam is rising into the air, just to see if I can help pinpoint that. So I'm very appreciative of that. And also thank Councilmember Burton, who arranged with me a meeting of some residents in District 4 on some traffic items and following up with them. So that's all I have to report tonight, Mayor. Thank you.
Councilmember McConaughey.
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, a thank you to Police and Fire for arranging to do the badge paintings here with City Council. The public has repeatedly expressed their concern for public safety, their support for public safety, and it's very appropriate that we be able to be here in a public forum to recognize those who are putting the safety of the public ahead of their own. as they perform their service to the city. So thank you for bringing that here so we can be a part of that. That's very appreciated. Second, my oldest boy is now old enough to play soccer. So Saturday morning we were out at the soccer fields, and Mr. Clegg, if you would please pass our thanks and appreciation to the folks that are out there. Is it still Brooks that's responsible for that?
It is still Brooks. I'll pass it.
Okay. I know he doesn't like to be called out publicly, but would you please make it very, very clear that he was indeed called out publicly for the quality of work that he's done out there? I've been out there a number of times while we've had different tournaments, league play, different things going on, the county sports, but this time it was a little different. Being over on the kids' side with my own kids, but seeing all the work, all the effort that's gone into taking care of those fields. There are so many hours that are put into that by our city staff that go completely unnoticed by those who are there. And it's kind of like breathing. If you have to think about breathing, something's wrong. With the soccer complex, there's so many things that are out there that are so finely tuned. They've done this and have such a good system done. It just worked out very, very well. So I'm proud of our city for the support that we give to the youth sports, and very appreciative of Mr. Brooks and the rest of the crews that are out there that do everything that they do to let the kids have fun on those mornings while the parents are still in kind of their sleep-deprived zombie state. So thank you.
Thank you. We'll now move to item number 7A, public hearing. Receive public input and consider for approval resolution 19-70, approving a waiver of fees for the Salt Lake County Senior Center regarding pavilion rental for May 29th, 2019, in an amount not to exceed $950. And I don't see Lindsay here, whose name is on, so Brian, you're going to take care of it?
Yeah, I'll take this one. Thank you, Mayor. As you heard from Ms. DeLeo previously, Salt Lake County Aging and Adult Services is requesting a waiver of fee waiver to use the pavilion for their National Senior Health and Fitness Day. They've used this will be the third year they've used our venue over there. This is a centralized event that is held for the senior community age 60 and over, and across the valley to come together and help keep seniors healthy and fit, as well as to provide the essential information for the many different services that are offered. So they're here to request a waiver of fees. Thank you.
Any questions for staff regarding this? Councilmember Anderson.
Yeah, I just have one. I know we talk about the budget limits of how much we can waive, and I know it's, I think, 1%. Is that?
You, according to 10.8, you're talking about 10.8.2 waivers. You can grant up to 1% without a quid pro quo. Without a quid pro quo consideration, up to 1% of general fund. Okay. Beyond that, you can do more with a quid pro quo consideration or a 10.8.2 study.
Okay, thank you. And I think it would be helpful for me just to see how many, because we do this pretty regularly, and I'd like to know kind of where we're at. Just a scorecard, I guess, or a status report.
We started keeping track of that information a couple of years ago, so we can provide that either directly to the council members in the form of an email, or I can bring it back to the council as a report at the next meeting. Although I won't be here, someone can report back. Which, do you have a preference? I can email it quicker to you all probably by the end of the week after we sit down with Lindsay, get it compiled in the format that I like, and I'll just send it to you if that's okay.
Yeah, email's fine for me. I don't know how the other council members feel, but I'm fine via email. It doesn't have a bearing specifically to this application, but just as we go through every council meeting, that we've got kind of a status. I don't think we're going to hit the 1%, but a status of how much we're waiving and the service in lieu of fees and all those kind of things. That's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Councilmember McConaughey.
Thank you, Mayor. Just going along with Councilmember Anderson's question, do we have a rough idea the value that's been either waived or where we've accepted service in lieu of fees? The reason I'm asking is because if it's 1% of just the general fund budget, so let's just say for the sake of round numbers, $60 million, I know that's on the low end, but the 1% would be about $600,000. I don't think we're even close to like a fraction of a percent. We're nowhere near that.
We're nowhere close to that.
Okay. Thank you.
I will now open up the public hearing portion of this, so if there's anyone in the audience that would like to speak to this, please come to the microphone. Seeing none, I will close the public hearing and bring it back for council discussion and or a motion. Councilmember McConaughey.
Thank you, Mayor. I do have a question, but it's for the applicant. We didn't hear from the applicant. We heard from the applicant during council or during citizen comments rather than during the public hearing. The question I would like to ask, if the council is okay, I know it's a deviation from protocol, but if the council is okay, the question I would like to ask is if they plan on doing their own cleanup after.
We'll first turn it to staff and maybe, okay, Cindy?
Yes, thank you. So yes, sir, every year when we have these events, we have 2 staff members or 2 volunteers in the pavilion cleaning up, cleaning tables, making sure everything's sanitary. So we always have 2 people in the pavilion itself personally making sure that everything's cleaned up. Wind comes along, we go out and we pick it up and we throw it away. We police the area quite well.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you.
So my other comment for the council then, as I'm looking at what the $950 in fees entails, there's a $500 deposit that's completely refundable, $150 setup and cleaning, and that's why I had the question, and then the $300 for the park pavilion. So as I'm looking at this, it doesn't look like there's any actual hard cost for the city, any staff time that we're going to, any significant staff time that would be used for this. The paper cost would be $450 if we did have the staff doing cleanup, but if they just tried to show up first thing in the morning, 5 a.m. and catch the pavilion, first come, first use, it's just potential revenue the city didn't get, but it's for a good cause, and it's something that personally I would rather see service in lieu of fees to cover it, but for the scale of what's being requested, I would be fine approving what's been requested, but seeing as there's another comment, I'll hold off on any motion along that measure. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember Jacob.
Thank you, Mayor. One question, one comment. For staff, the question is, are there ever applications that come to the staff for a request for a waiver of fees that don't make it to the council? In other words, that you administratively just deny or say, council's never gonna go for this, or whatever, for whatever reason, they don't meet a criteria and it doesn't get this far?
No,
Every one of them?
consistent with everyone
Okay.
that brings it forward, bring it to council. Since it's approving to waive the fee, we bring it to council and let you folks decide.
Okay, that's kind of what I thought would be the case, but I wanted to just double check. And the reason I bring that up is because I would like to see some sort of policy go into place, rather than come up here and we all look at it and go, yeah, I like this one, or no, I don't like that one, or I do like this one, I don't like that one, and let it be up to the whims of what charities or what we deem to be a worthy cause versus an unworthy cause, just on the opinions of 7 of us, or 4 of us, for that matter. Would it be feasible, or do you think it's something that we could work on and to make a policy of, requests like this will be approved, requests like this won't be approved, and, put something concrete into place so we're not doing this all the time for these, in comparison to $100 and whatever $million budget, $900 is really not a lot, but we're always doing this. And we're always having the same discussion. Well, I think this is a worthy cause, so I'm okay with this, and somebody, and it's just always the same thing, and I'm just wondering if there's not a way to kind of speed this up. And I know me talking like this is not speeding this up, so I recognize the hypocrisy. But just throwing that out there as a comment. Yeah, anyway.
Councilmember Whitelock.
I would like it to request that we maybe look at our fees, because when I was looking for something else on other city websites, and looking at their fees for different things, I noticed that ours seem a little high. Like, if I wanted to rent a park, I think I'd go to a neighboring city to rent it because it'd be cheaper even as a non-resident. And a lot of them had resident and non-resident fees, and I think that might be a good thing to look at. And I agree with Councilman Jacobs, every council meeting having someone here saying, please waive our fees, to me says, we're either an easy place to get fees waived and nobody else does, which I've also been told, not many cities waive fees for park rental, or our fees are so high that they're like, are you kidding me? Let's see if we can get it waived. So I think there's some work that needs to be done on these.
No more discussion? Anyone like to make a motion? Councilmember Burton?
I move to approve. I don't see the number of it. 19-70. There it is, resolution 19-70.
Councilmember Anderson?
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Burton, a second by Councilmember Anderson. Discussion to the motion. Councilmember Whitelock.
And so, because I feel strongly that these aren't my dollars, and I don't feel like we should always be gifting them away. I like Salt Lake County for Aging. I like your organization. I think you do great work. But I will be voting no just because it's a principal issue. I just don't think it's my job to give away citizens' money all the time, and that's what I feel we're doing. If these are true costs, which I'm not sure they are, don't worry though. Don't worry.
Okay, let's vote.
Councilmember Burton,
Aye.
Mayor Riding,
Yes.
Councilmember Jacob,
Yes.
Councilmember McConaughey,
Aye.
Councilmember Whitelock,
No.
Councilmember Lamb,
Yes.
Councilmember Anderson.
Yes.
Vote passes 6-1 in favor.
So we now move to consent items. I have been asked to pull consent item F, as in Foxtrot, to a date in the future. Councilmember Burton.
Okay, I move to approve all consent items with the exception of F. And on consent item E, I want to state that that will not start until June.
Councilmember McConaughey.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Burton and a second by Councilmember McConaughey. Discussion to the motion. Councilmember McConaughey.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate Councilmember Burton calling out that specific item with consent item E. That's the overlay project for 2200 West. We discussed this earlier. His primary concern is making sure the work does not start until after school is out. So that's why the verbiage in the motion to approve that on condition that the work not begin until June. So, thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember Burton.
And the way I came up with that date, the last day of school is May 31st, so if I just say June, then we know school is over. That road has a lot of kids walking up and down there, a lot of parents taking their kids to school, so I want to not have that conflict.
Councilmember Lamb.
Thank you, Mayor. If we're going to change consent item B, why don't we pull B as well and then just discuss that real quickly afterwards and then just approve the others? Because it sounds like you want to change B, so why not pull it and change it? Just my thought.
Councilmember, Rob, you've got a comment?
My comment was consistent with Councilmember Lamb. If you're going to change anything in any of them, pull that one, vote on the rest, and then discuss that one and vote on it separately.
Okay. Do we need to amend the motion then? Let's go ahead and, well, okay, there's still more comments on this motion, so Councilmember Anderson.
Thank you. I'm agreeing with Councilmember Lamb that if we're changing something, we ought to pull and discuss it, because one of the questions I would have for Rob Wall is, we probably have a contract that says start at a certain time on that project, or, I mean, I don't know that we can just in a consent calendar say you don't start something till June without having some implication somewhere.
Right, in fact, in the enabling language in state law for consent items, there are items where there is no discussion and it's just a routine approval. So if you're going to change something in any one of them or want to discuss it, you need to pull it off the consent agenda and discuss it independently of the rest of the items.
Okay.
And that's consistent with your own the city code also and the council rules.
Okay, right. I would hope the council will follow that. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember Jacob.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll offer a substitute motion that we approve all consent items less items E and F. That's Echo and Foxtrot.
Councilmember Burton.
I will second this substitute.
Okay, we have a substitute motion by Councilmember Jacob and a second by Councilmember Burton. Discussion to that motion. Seeing none, let's vote.
Councilmember Anderson,
Yes.
Councilmember Jacob,
Yes.
Mayor Riding,
Yes.
Councilmember Lamb,
Yes.
Councilmember Burton,
Aye.
Councilmember Whitelock,
Yes.
Councilmember McConaughey.
Aye.
Vote passes 7 in favor.
Now we'll go back to item E, or excuse me, that E? Consent item E. And Councilmember Jacob, you made the motion, so a substitute motion.
I believe Councilmember Burton wanted to discuss this one further, so I'll defer.
Okay, Councilmember Burton.
Okay, I would request that on this one, we don't begin the construction until after school is out. So I move that we adopt resolution 1974, consent item E, with the limitation of starting the construction after June 1st.
Councilmember McConaughey.
Second with comment.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilmember Burton, a second by Councilmember McConaughey. Discussion of the motion, Councilmember McConaughey.
Thank you, Mayor. A concern was brought up earlier about being able to specify the date as part of the motion. With the attached contract, it says that the city would issue the notice to proceed, and then the contractor has 45 days from that notice to proceed. Since the city is the one who issues that notice to proceed, it shouldn't, at least I can't imagine it would be an issue if we direct staff to wait until June 1st effective date for that notice to proceed. So I just want to bring up that in response to the comment that came up earlier. Thank you, Mayor.
And the notice to proceed can state the date on that, so. Councilmember Whitelock.
I would like to have the two gentlemen that are conversing in the back weigh in on this. I appreciate that we're looking after the school children, but some school children are in year-round schools and some are in charter schools, and I want to make sure that it will still be okay. So
Well, I can share with you, the concern the staff has is there's a time for when it must start, but the effective date of the agreed price is no more than 60. So you're gonna put a 15-day window from 45 to 60 on which the work will have to begin. If it doesn't get started by, in this instance, June 10th, then they would not have to honor the price that we're agreeing to today.
and probably the price would go up.
Yes, it would.
Okay, I'm going to not vote in favor of this. Could we ask them that they start at a certain area? Maybe if they start at 94th and work up, maybe. I don't know. Or we could have them be cognizant of the kids. I don't know. I know kids walk that, but I think it's a problem, so I'll be voting no.
Councilmember Anderson.
Yeah, I mean, if we're delaying it, I mean, is the project 60 days? Is that what I'm understanding? It's 45 days, so we're probably not running into start of school, but it's probably not running into school, so it's probably doable. I just get concerned that to me, this seems more administrative, that the Public Works would know when school is in session and would set contracts up for when we're doing this. I don't know how I'm gonna vote yet, I'm still weighing it, but to me, I would hate to have us on the dais set start dates and end dates on contracts. especially if we miss, David, did you say they had to start by June 10th?
Excuse me, it would be 60 days from today, so it would need to be started by June 10th, 60 days from today. What your motion could be was we approve the contract with specific direction to the city manager to work with the school district and those elementary schools affected to keep them safe. And I will then instruct Dave Murphy, Brian Clegg, and the staff to do that.
I have a question then regarding what you just said. Typically, every time I've bid things in the past, that 60-day time frame started from the date I submitted my bid. So is that how, David Murphy, can you clarify that?
I could try to clarify that if I had the contract language in front of me, which I do not.
No, it's the bid
So,
documents.
I know it's the bid documents, and so typically, the bid price is open for 60 days, yes, that is the typical window. So
From the date the bid is submitted?
from the date it's submitted.
What date was it submitted?
Right now, that would be 2 weeks ago. So it would have been on a Tuesday,
So we're down to
You're-
30 days.
yeah.
So we're not gonna get,
See if I can find it on my schedule when the bid opened.
Councilmember Anderson, you're still on.
sorry, yeah, so if that's the case, then we couldn't hold off to June if it's 60 days from 2 weeks ago.
No, we would probably violate that time frame.
See, that's why I don't want to get into this kind of dialogue, so I'm probably not going to be,
And I'm using my old reference to contract law and looking at it. If this is an issue, I'd like to have investigated and do a little research. I don't like shooting from the hip from this position. I would want to pull the contract, review it, and if you want me to do that, I'll try to get an answer by the end of the evening, but to put that imposition in there right now, I don't know that the consequences are.
It's more so the bid documents than the contract.
Yeah, it's back on my server, and I don't have access to it here.
that's all I have, Mayor, thank you.
Councilmember Burton?
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to adjust my motion to state that to work with the city manager on timing to make it as flexible and compatible with the school closures during the summer as appropriate.
Well, we have a motion, we have a substitute motion on the table right now that we're discussing.
No, that was a different one. We already passed that one. That was for all the consent items. Then I did this motion separately afterwards.
Is that,
Yes, that was a call.
is that correct? Okay, so state that again then.
Okay. I move that we approve consent item 19, consent item E, resolution 19-24. 19-74, and have the city manager work with the contractor on timing on this to avoid conflict with school.
What does that mean? Like, don't do any work until school's out?
Whatever David Bricky thinks works well.
Okay,
Okay.
okay.
Or rephrase it the way Mr. Bricky expressed it. But my goal is to give him the flexibility to see what the needs are and to work with whatever resources we have to make it go smooth.
You didn't get a second on that motion,
He hasn't stopped talking yet.
but okay, so Councilmember McConaughey would need to approve the second that he did. Or he's shaking his head. So we don't have a second for his amended motion. Councilmember Anderson?
I'm going to move to adopt Resolution 19-74 as written.
Second.
We still have that one on the table, right? The motion, Melanie?
No, it dies for Philip a second.
Okay.
The substitute motion that was made was to approve all consent items except for 8E and 8F. And then Councilmember Burton discussed consent item 8E, move to adopt the resolution 1974 first to have it start in June, and then he amended it to work with the city manager. Councilmember McConaughey seconded the first motion, but when Councilmember Burton withdrew his, or amended the motion, Councilmember McConaughey withdrew his second. So basically, the motion died for a lack of a second, so we have nothing on the table.
But we have a motion, Councilmember McConaughey.
Well, now we have your.
Councilmember McConaughey.
Okay, so this is comments to Councilmember Anderson's motion to move as approved, or approve as written?
Correct. There's a motion on the table, but it doesn't have a second yet.
Second.
Okay. I did not hear that. So now, we have a motion and a second discussion to the motion. Councilmember McConaughey.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll be in opposition to this one. My biggest concern is I'm really getting tired of hearing from citizens about their frustration with perceived lack of coordination with our projects and those of other entities. As we've got 7800 South going on, UDOT started to restripe some stuff on 90th. There's a perception that we're not really reaching out and working with other entities. With end of school and graduation coming up, you've got the high school right there, right next to this overlay project. I want to make very, very sure that we work with the school, which is why I want it in the motion from us to, I would prefer we just wait until after school's out to start. I wish that would have been part of the conversation before we even went out to bid. I wish as we did these projects, we looked at, okay, who are those stakeholders, and are there significant issues, or are there small things that we could do? Because we could have said in the RFP and the bid that was requested originally that the work was to start on or after school ended, since we've got the high school right there next to it. So, West Jordan High School.
It's Westvale Elementary.
Oh, Westvale Elementary, never mind, I read that as 27. Yeah. So, with that correction, I am, yeah, I'll leave my comments to that. I'd like to see us, I've said enough. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember Anderson.
No, and I actually am going to completely agree with Councilmember McConaughey. The time to have had that discussion was before all of this started. We're at the end of the line, and we have risk. But I totally agree with what he's saying, that this needs to be thought of with stakeholders ahead of time. So I'm just echoing what Councilmember McConaughey said, but I do believe the time to address that is before today.
Councilmember Whitelock.
And I too just want to say I agree.
Councilmember Burton.
So I did, when I saw it on the calendar, I did it on the agenda, I did see that, I did talk to them ahead of time, and there is no start date listed on there. I was not made aware of the 60-day, which wasn't brought to my attention until just now, which is why I made my amendment to have the city manager work out whatever is available to work out on this short notice, which apparently you guys decided not to let him do that.
Councilmember Anderson.
I just had a question for Councilmember Burton. When you said they, did you talk to the contractor, or did you talk to someone at staff? Okay, thank you.
Seeing no more comments, let's vote on this motion.
Okay. Councilmember Whitelock.
Yes.
Councilmember Anderson.
Yes.
Councilmember Jacob.
Yes.
Councilmember Lamb.
Yes.
Mayor Writing.
Yes.
Councilmember Burton.
No.
The vote passes 5-1 in favor.
Okay, business items 10A. Discussion and possible action regarding resolution 19-59 regarding an appeal on adjustment by reducing the impact fees assessment to the Utah Islamic Center located at 1075 West, 9000 South. Scott Langford.
Thanks, Mayor, Council. Nate Nelson, our city engineer, has worked closely with our impact fee consultants as well as the applicant, and he's here to give a quick summary and answer any questions if you may have them.
Okay, good evening. The city code in Title 3 says that a person may petition the city council for an adjustment to an impact fee, a standard impact fee, the city council may adjust the fee if it finds that there is an unusual circumstances which affects the petitioner and that the impact fees are being imposed fairly when adjusted. So with that, we've received a petition from Russ Naylor on behalf of the Utah Islamic Center for a waiver of and a reduction of their impact fees, particularly those that are assessed for traffic. The main point of their argument is that as a place of worship, it's empty and vacant most of the time. During the weekdays, they've only got a handful, 10 or 12 people that come and go. And then on their one day of worship, which is Fridays, they have up to 200 people, but generally even fewer than that, 100 to 200 people. The city impact fee schedule does not currently have a specific line item for churches or low impact institutions such as fraternities, social organizations, churches, and that sort of thing. And so it's been customary, it's been by practice for the last number of years that we assess the same fee that applies to office space. And that's worked out just fine. We've received this request, however. So when we received the request, the applicant paid their fee, their $1,100 fee. We took in their request and proceeded to process that request. We reached out to Tischler Bice, the city's impact fee consultant, and told them about this request and the basis for the request, forwarded the request onto them, and they did a calculation on what a fee might be in this case if the city were to consider separately houses of worship or other low-impact type of institutional uses. The fee calculation is in your packet. I just want to make it very clear that we're only asking for a decision from the council on this one appeal, which is from the Utah Islamic Center. But the methodology of calculating that fee would carry on if the council decided in the future to adopt a special category of fee in the future impact fee schedule.
Have you as staff considered coming back to council with an adjustment to the fee schedule for this?
We have. In fact, we'd kind of like to get an idea if it's something that the city council would want to entertain and have us bring back, or if they're comfortable with the way we currently assess the fees. One thing I'll just let you know that I did a little bit of just some internet searches from other cities to see what they do, and there's a range. On the one side, which is Salt Lake City, they have 3 categories of non-residential fees, which is for retail, office, and industrial. So everything has to fit in one of those. West Jordan, we have 8 categories. The closest fit has been that for offices. And Logan has 4 categories for commercial, office, manufacturing, and industrial. So that's on one side, and that's kind of where we fit. And it's, like I say, it has worked fine in the past. On the other side, some of the cities that we looked at, there was South Jordan. They have 27 categories. So for a lot of different types of retails and businesses and different things, and including one specifically for church. St. George has 24 categories, including one for church. West Valley has 23 categories, including one for church/synagogue. So it seems like the decision is kind of discretionary. It's how we want to do it and whether we want to continue what we're doing or do it differently, taking into account that it's a low impact type of a use.
Okay, we've got some questions, starting with Councilmember Burton.
Thank you, Mayor. So is what we're deciding today, is it for adjusting just for the Islamic Center, or is it also at the same time adjusting our impact fee schedule?
It's just the Islamic Center.
Just the Islamic one?
Correct.
Okay.
But for your own use, if we were to add a line item, the calculation is basically included, and you'll see on the last page, there's a couple little handwritten numbers as how it might fit in, and you know what that fee would probably be. But again, we're not asking for any action on that at this time.
Let me ask our attorneys a question, because if we do this, does that kind of set a precedent for houses of worship?
Yes. The challenge you have in doing this is simply this. There's no problem designating an institutional use, but if you do this one now outside the fee schedule, that doesn't leave you a lot of choice to not change the fee schedule, because you've now given favor to a religious institution, and to then say you're not going to do that, you're then favoring a religious institution if others come in. So I guess well, go ahead, David, you can talk about it.
So if you do have a religious entity that traditionally builds a lot of structures, you're going to be granting them that grant, that same privilege on every one of those buildings.
And that's why we asked Tischler Bice to use that methodology, because we knew that based on the argument that was put forth by this applicant, that same argument would be used in numerous times in the future.
Mayor, if I may?
You're still up.
Has this applicant, have they paid these fees yet?
They have.
Yeah.
So what they're petitioning for is a partial reimbursement.
Okay. If we were to postpone this part and do our fee adjustment first, then would there be better grounds for discussing a refund? But then it would go back to hundreds of other people who.
Yeah, I think if, when a new fee is adopted, then, there's a starting point, and it would not be retroactively unless some specific arrangement was made in this case.
So in order for us to provide or to listen to this appeal, does this require a public hearing?
As an appeal, I don't believe it does, but to change the fees in the future, I believe it would.
All right, thank you.
Councilmember McConaughey.
Thank you, Mayor. So I just wanted to get a little bit of clarification. You said the city was the one that reached out to Tischler Bice to perform the study?
That's correct.
Not the applicant?
Okay. If I could clarify, the applicant followed our process, which is to submit an application, pay a fee, which funds Tischler Bice to do the study, but we're kind of the mediator in between the two. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So they didn't directly reach out to Tischler Bice. We did.
So my thought, thank you for the answer. My thought process on this one is, I think it probably makes sense to add another classification to our fee schedule. But if they were the ones who came back and said, hey, here's a study that we had done, I would have wanted to make sure that it was our staff guiding and making sure everything made sense, lined up. As I'm looking at this, the low impact institution seems kind of vague. There's a little bit of verbiage there, which is helpful. But I like the idea of going this route, but I don't want to rule on an appeal if we haven't formally looked at the fee structure. So I know there's still others waiting to speak. I'm not making a motion or anything, but my recommendation would be that as a council, if there's support for this line of thought, I would suggest we table this one for a period of time, consider the fee structure, the impact fee table, and then if there's a change approved, then come back and have a conversation regarding the appeal as to whether or not we should refund based on what the new fees happen to be. The other thought would be, if we did decide to take action and adjust our fee structure, I would also be inclined to refund them the fee that they paid to get things going. If they brought up an issue, we agreed it's an issue, we make a fix on top of the difference in those, for the impact fees, I would also suggest it would be appropriate to refund the appeal fee if we side with them. So, thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember Jacob.
Thank you, Mayor. This discussion for the last couple minutes reminds me of a joke that I heard this week. I ordered a chicken and an egg on Amazon. I'll let you know. That is to say, whichever one we do first, it will precipitate the other one. Considering this application is already before us, if we approve this tonight, it will precipitate and necessitate us looking at the impact fee schedule, as our attorney indicated. If we do that first, then great, we do that first, and we do this second. I don't really care which way we go. I'm fine approving this one tonight. But I do think, I'll echo what some others have said, that this is the right way to go. I think looking at what we recently looked at with business licenses and what we recently looked at with the rental dwellings, more categories is better so that it's fairer. I think we could all agree that a church, mosque, synagogue, et al. Would be a lower impact than an office building, generally speaking. So I think this is the right way to go. I'm fine approving this tonight. I was going to make a motion, but there's another person, so I'll hold off for a minute.
Councilmember Whitelock.
So, Mr. Langford, could you please clarify, because I believe on our conversation earlier today that you indicated that the city paid for that study. You said that it was out of impact fees that was paid. They paid a separate amount of money
Yes.
for that study that they otherwise wouldn't have paid.
Correct. It's $1,150 to be exact is the application fee for them to go through this process.
Okay, thank you.
I do have a question, and I'm not sure who can answer this question, but the question is if we make this change and we now go back and have to change the fee schedule for every house of worship that's constructed in the future, how much money are we losing from this as a city, and how do we make that up? What other ways do we make that up? I don't know who can answer this.
I can give you a general answer, Mayor. It's when there's a new category that arises that you'd like to look at, it's always best to not to look at the entire category, have the consultant do an analysis, because they can tell you that number through their statistical analysis, what that will be in the future, given the amount of land that has yet to be developed. They can do an analysis, based on the number of buildings that have been built, extrapolate that to the land that is to be developed in the future. That's who would tell you that number. That's one of the things you need to consider is what the financial impact will be. And you also need to consider the breadth of what a change might include. There's another issue you always want to look at. A lot of these institutional uses located in strip malls. And what cities run into over time is one institutional use may locate in a strip mall, and then their lease runs out, they decide not to renew, and you have another use come in that has a big impact in that same space, but you've lost your opportunity to collect the impact fee to address the impact that use has. So it's a trade-off, and you do see a lot of cities who have a lot of different categories and others who don't. I think if you were to talk to the Salt Lake folks, the reason they have the few they do is that they're trying to anticipate that the impact of that piece of property can vary from year to year, decade to decade, depending upon who occupies the building. Now, if you have a single-purpose building, like a church building, it's unlikely that that is going to change over time. Well, that works for those institutional uses. But where you have a strip mall where it can be leased to anybody and you have different uses coming in and out, that's where you see the impact on the city not being addressed in a way that you can really predict. Does that make sense?
It does. Thank
And
you.
I'm not arguing for or against this. I'm just trying to
Impacts.
lay out what the impacts are and how that works.
Councilmember Jacob.
Thank you, Mayor. Something you just said just brought something to mind, and that is, for me, it's more important that we do the right thing, and then we figure out what the budget impacts are, and then we figure out what what that means to us, and then we adjust accordingly. An impact fee is a specific fee for a specific reason that's collected because we're going to incur a specific cost. And so we collect that impact fee. If the study is done that says, we're not gonna incur that cost, we have no right to collect that fee. We should not be collecting a fee and then looking back at it and say, well, gosh, we're gonna lose $100,000 in impact fees over the next 10 years because churches now won't have to pay impact fees. What we should look at is, oh, you know what, the church has been paying $100,000 too much up till now, over the last 10 years, over the next, whatever. So it's important to get it right on principle, then we can address the budgetary impacts. But I don't think it's right, and that's what this study has done. This study has gone through and looked at the principle. What is this use going to engender for impact? What is their impact, and therefore what should that fee be? And it's important that we get that principle correct. And if that principle is correct, then we can go back and look at the budget and say, you know what, we've been using these fees that we've been collecting, which have been too high for their impact, but we've been using that money anyway. Should we have been? Where have we been using it? Where should that money have been coming from on a correct principle? It's important to do it based on the principle, not based on the current circumstance, whatever that impact is going to be. I had another thought halfway through. Oh, the different uses like the strip mall kind of a thing. Those impact fees are not those based somewhat on the zoning? So a church can occupy a space in almost any zone, right? So, but based on that zoning, that impact fee is collected based at least in part on that zoning. Isn't that right?
It is, but if you have a strip mall that's built and the primary tenant is a church, and later on, so you don't assess the impact fee because they come in and ask for a waiver, and then later on, that use has changed, you've lost the impact fee.
Right, but it's still a commercial zone if it's a strip mall?
Right, but this is an appeal. Understand, you have an existing impact fee, and you're asking for a change.
Right, and I'm worried about...
If it's an institutional building that will never change, then correct, it's probably likely that you're never gonna lose the fee. But if you're looking at the principles, you need to look at what's the use and what the impact will be on the city over time.
Right, and that's what I'm talking about, though. How is that fee collected? Is that fee collected based on the tenant, or is it based on the zone?
It's based on the zone, which is why this is an appeal.
Right, okay, so
excuse me, it's based on the uses allowed in the zone.
Okay, and this isn't allowed use in most zones, right? I mean,
Yes.
yeah, okay.
Scott, you had a comment too?
It may provide some context to kind of illustrate how we've handled impact fee schedules for different uses in the past. Councilman Jacob brought up the point, does it matter if you approve this today or you delay it and then talk about the amending the fee schedule? Well, in the context of warehousing, for example, we had several years ago a run basically of multiple applications to amend or reduce the impact fees for warehousing. They felt that it wasn't on par with our manufacturing or regular industrial impacts. And so we had a 5 or 6 in a row. It seemed like almost every council meeting had these requests that are similar to what you're seeing tonight. And the council kept approving them, and after a while the council said, you know what, we've kind of set a precedent here, let's amend our fee schedule. And so if you look at our impact fee schedule today, you see warehousing is a separate item. Similar with hotels. We didn't have one before, and it was kind of clunky. Okay, where do you put it? Where's the specific impact to these various city systems or services? And so we approached it with a finer grain and implemented that new category, if you will. So I don't know if that helps, but that's how the councils have handled this issue in the past.
Councilmember Jacob,
Thank you.
you're still up.
Yeah, just one last piece and then I'll be done. As far as single-use buildings versus the temporary use in the strip mall or those kinds of situations, I would say broadly speaking, this category, just looking at our demographic, at our city, at the way that religious institutions have been building and or leasing property here, I would say, and this is just a spitballing guess, and we could commission a study if you want to, that 90% of the time, it's a single-use building. And rarely is it, it does happen, but it's the vast minority of cases that we have a religious institution leasing a strip mall. There just aren't that many of that type of religious institutions here. Now, that may change someday, and at that time, we may want to reassess this. But as for right now, I think 90+% of the time, we're looking at single-use buildings, not just predominant LDS religion. It's, since I've been on planning commission and council, we've seen Greek Orthodox churches, we've seen this Islamic Center come up, I've seen several different religions approach the council or come into the city one way or another. So I think 90% of the time, though, plus these are single-use buildings. So I think it's safe to go down this road, and if that changes, we can adjust.
Councilmember Burton.
Thank you, Mayor. Is this a single-use building we're talking about?
Yes, it's a mosque.
Okay, so in this, if we did do a fee adjustment, we could identify it as single-use buildings and not worry about the strip mall thing. My other question is, probably for the attorneys, or the attorney, either way, could we do a fee schedule change and then put a earlier date on there saying everyone that was applied prior to such and such a date will be subject to the new fee schedule, not the date the schedule was, but an earlier date, so we could include some others in there and refund back to those people who we overcharged?
The challenge is, where do you draw that line?
That would have to be a decision we have to make, but that could be done.
No, you'd have to come up with you'd have to tell me what the line is you want to draw.
Right, we'd have
Because
to.
where do you draw the line as to how far back you're going to go? How far retroactive are you going to make this? And wherever you draw that line, then you're going to have others coming in. The challenge with this one is you're dealing with a religious institution, and one of the things I'd encourage you to do as you talk about this is call this institutional use, not church. It's the problem with this being a First Amendment use that creates this unique circumstance. So if you backdate an institutional use to X, and it's one religion, and another religion says, well, wait a minute, what about me? I don't fit in that category. I want mine back too.
Right. So I'm just saying, if we took a look at this study and use that study to come up with a date of when we think would be appropriate to start charging that fee, then any institution from that date forward would need to pay the new rate.
It's the date of the study, because you're saying something's changed now to where we've seen a different impact, and we're going to recognize it from this date on.
Okay, so we can't go prior to the date of the study without having the study come up with a reason why we could go.
Well, you can ask them to. I don't think they're going to be able to come up with a reason that's legal.
Okay.
But
Thank you.
we can try.
Councilmember McConaughey.
Thank you, Mayor. Two things I'd like to do. I'm not doing this, I'm just laying out my thought process so it makes sense when it comes out. I'd like to make a motion to table this appeal to no later than the second meeting of May. The second thing I'd like to do is direct staff to come back with a proposal for a modified impact fee structure for a modified impact fee structure. When we have that conversation, at that point, we can get into some of the details as to, okay, well, how would this apply? Do we want to do something in separate carve-out for strip malls versus single-use buildings? And we can get into the details at that point. I don't want to approve an appeal until we have some solid groundwork to stand on going forward. So right now, I would be no for the appeal, but rather than say no, I'd rather put it off and then deal with the issue first of adjusting the fee schedule. Going along with that, as part of the budget process each year, we approve the fee schedule. So I think that can be worked into some of the conversations we're going to be having here pretty soon anyways, which is why I suggested the appeal could be no later, actually maybe no later than the second or first meeting in June rather than second meeting in May. So I'm not seeing anybody else's lights on the mic. I move that we table this appeal until no later than the first meeting of June.
Councilmember Whitelock?
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember McConaughey, a second by Councilmember Whitelock. Discussion to the motion. Seeing none, let's vote.
Councilmember McConaughey?
Aye.
Councilmember Burton?
Aye.
Councilmember Whitelock?
Yes.
Mayor Riding?
Yes.
Councilmember Jacob?
No.
Councilmember Anderson?
Yes.
Councilmember Lamb?
No.
Vote passes 5-2 in favor.
That was
Thank
to
you.
the first meeting in June.
First meeting in June. No later than first meeting in June.
Okay, item 10B, discussion and possible
Mayor.
action. I'm sorry?
Sorry, could I have the floor back for a moment?
Okay.
The second part of that was to give direction to staff to bring back the conversation. Do we need a formal vote on that? Do you want to just ask that it be done as part of the budget process? How would you like to proceed with that part, so it's not?
Let's have our city
Left out.
manager jump in on that one.
That's going to require a public hearing, so if you're going to have, as I understand the motion, to have this come back by May 22nd, you're putting on us the obligation to have a public hearing on May 8th.
First meeting of June.
We can bring,
The appeal was no later than the first meeting in June. But even with that, if for some reason we're not ready, we haven't been able to meet it, we can have it and brought back on the agenda, and we could still continue it to another day. I just didn't want to leave it out there indefinitely because the request from city management has been that we not do that. So.
Ultimately, this type of discussion would be one, because of the type of use and the type of categories that could be created, would be wonderful for a work session.
Which we discussed doing a few of those with the budget, so that's why I was suggesting we include it with our budget conversations.
So perhaps you can anticipate May 8th and May 22nd.
So is there any formal vote needed for that by the council?
I
or
don't
Mayor,
think
is
so,
that
it's just a
sufficient for staff?
direction to staff to bring that
Seeing-
back.
I'm seeing a lot of agreeing faces.
Yeah, so on the second meeting in May, we would come back with an adjustment to the fee schedule that would include this.
I'm seeing a positive assertion by our planning development director. So we will plan on May 22nd.
Okay. Now we'll move to item 10B. Discussion and possible action regarding resolution 19-77, authorizing staff to implement the Adopt a Storm Drain program. Clint Hutchings. Is anything like Adopt a Pothole program?
I'm not familiar with the Adopt a Pothole program. Yeah.
Oh, okay, thanks, Brian.
But this is probably a pretty great presentation tonight. That was for you, Dirk. So basically, I don't know that a lot of our residents or general public really knows what happens to storm drain water once it goes down the drain. But if it's not rain, it doesn't belong in the drain. So a little background of our storm drain system. We have a big system here. We have 180 miles of storm drain pipe. We have nearly 5,000 storm drain manholes, and we have nearly 7,000 storm drain inlets or grates. So you can imagine this is a huge burden for our public works staff to try to keep these drains clean, especially before or after a rainstorm. Wow, the font really changed here. So what happens after a storm? The rainwater gets washed down the sidewalk and into the grate, and along with that go the leaves, grass clippings, dog poop, anything else that's in the road, oil and grease from the cars, and that all goes directly into the Jordan River in our case. So the most effective way to keep our waterways clean is to not allow things to go down into the drain that shouldn't. We should only be allowing rain water to go down the drains. And so, as I've thought about this, I started looking online, and I read about other cities in the country who have brought on an adopt a storm drain plan. City of Houston does it, San Francisco does it, a number of cities back east. We would be the first city in the state that I know of to have a program like this. So what happens is, this gives the residents an opportunity to adopt a storm drain that's near their home. The Scouts could adopt a number of storm drains for their troops. Church groups could adopt storm drains. But basically what we're asking is that before or after a storm, they just clean up the area around the storm drain, clean the grates off, and keep our waterways clean. This is a little flyer that we are planning on using for part of the marketing. There's a few different things that we want to do. We want to send out this in the utility mailers 1 month. Kim Wells has an article already written and ready to go, should you choose to approve this tonight, that I think would go out in the next journal or the one following. And then we've also talked about doing some educational videos. So to get the public on board with this program. I was going to actually get online and show you the live version of this, but in the interest of time, I don't think I'm going to do that tonight, if that's okay. But what we've produced is an interactive online map that shows all of our storm drains in the city. And over on the right-hand side of the screen, you can see once you set up an account and log in, you choose a storm drain that you want to adopt, and you click on it, and then you name that storm drain whatever you want. And you could have some fun with it, you know, Mr. Clean. I think I would name mine something like maybe Stormy McDrainface or something instead of Stormy Daniels. But anyway, we could have some fun with that. Anyway, on the back end of the system, we have another dashboard for staff to look at where we can see what drains have been adopted, what people have named them in case they've named them something inappropriate. We'd want to take those off. And just as easily, if a resident decides they want to orphan their adopted storm drain, they can do that as well. So you can adopt as many as you like or none at all. And that's basically the program. I think it would relieve some burden from our storm drain crew at work. I think it would involve the citizens easily, that people want to help out and not be a huge time commitment. Any questions?
Okay, we have Councilmember Burton first.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm thinking of this similar to our Adopt a Park program the city implemented a few years ago. Can you tell me what the status is on our Adopt a Park program and how that's working?
I didn't know we had an Adopt a Park program, sorry.
We did have one at one time, didn't we, Brian?
A while back, it's not functional.
Did it not work?
It didn't go,
And the reason I think of it like that, because people who go and use the park should take a natural responsibility to care for that park and clean it up, and you know, if they drop something, pick it up, break something, clean it up, and report it, whatever. And I look at this, if I have a storm drain in my front yard or near my yard, I feel like it's already my responsibility to keep it from looking like that picture you showed. And I'm not opposed to the Adopt a One. Your note says there's no fiscal impact, but I think there is for us to monitor and track it. There will be some, not enough. Hopefully the results we get will offset the time we put in and we'll come out ahead on this. But I'd like to expand that education thing to let people know, even if no one has adopted the storm drain on your street, you still have a responsibility to care for what's debris is piling up around that storm drain and causing some problems. I've heard of some people's houses actually got flooded due to a storm drain being clogged. So I would like to expand that education to include everybody, not just those who adopt the storm drains.
Okay.
Councilmember Lamb.
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, thanks, Clint. You do amazing things on our maps, and this is amazing too. I mean, honestly, if I were to tell you right now, I don't know where my storm drain is in my neighborhood. I'd probably have to go look, but I would adopt it. So this is a great thing, and like Dirk said, there's a lot of people that have their areas flooded because their grates are covered in something. So my quick question, and this probably isn't geared towards you, it's probably more geared towards Kim. There is a state program called We All Live Downstream, which basically fits in right with this. Do you know if Kim's, I don't know if you, in your conversation with Kim, if that's been talked about, you know, working with this other Utah entity to kind of gear up and work together on this?
I believe that we've had some conversations with Jen Wilson, our storm drain manager, and Kim. Jen has also been a part of these discussions. So that's, I'm not really familiar with the state program, but.
Okay, great. I'll get with Kim and ask her then.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councilmember McConaughey.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm probably a little bit more excited about this than I should be. This is just cool to me. I mean, to be able, not every city is large enough to have a GIS department. So much of what happens in that group, again, is not really visible, but this is one of those cool touch points with residents. One of the first things that started coming up when I was on city council were concerns about flooding in the neighborhood over by Constitution Park. We had some significant issues and a lot of work that went into that. And this, I see this as kind of the natural evolution as we've continued to improve things from that point where we were. You can visually see where these storm drain inlets are. Giving the people the opportunity to adopt them, I really, really like. A number of years ago, I heard about the program in Hawaii. They have the tsunami sirens, the warning sirens out there, and they ask the residents to adopt them to try and make sure that they're maintained. They hear them during the tests. I would like to take where we're at, and I know this goes a little bit beyond GIS and starts to become sort of a public information thing, but I'd like to run with it a little bit further and see if we can't also do like adopt a fire hydrant type of program as well. And with both the storm drain and the fire hydrant thing, I'd love for the folks who've adopted these to be able to take a picture with their phone and send it in to confirm that, yeah, look, everything looks good. Or the city can push out a little note saying, hey, we've got a storm coming. Please clean out the storm, or please send us a note, or please send us a photo of the clean storm drain. Or they can send over a request saying, hey, we need to get a street sweeper over here. Or after a large snowstorm, send in a picture of a cleared fire hydrant. As they do that, again, this isn't fully thought out, this is just kind of rushing into my mind right now, but as they do that, whoever owns it can accumulate some sort of points through the city and then redeem it for maybe a Public Works hat or t-shirt. I know that we go through a lot of these low dollar amount items. I mean, when we went through the surplusing, how many t-shirts were out there in the Public Works building to be surplused? To give residents a little bit of a way to have a connection to the city and feel some ownership for the infrastructure, and then get a little bit of a reward besides feeling good about having done something small and tangible. But I am probably more excited about this than I should be, but this is really cool. The only thing I'm a little bit disappointed about is we didn't get to see the interactive demo, but I can appreciate wanting to get out at a decent tower. So
I'll send you the link.
Please do. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember Whitelock.
So, Clint, thank you for sending me your email. In the presentation, I didn't see some of the things that are my concerns. My concerns are if we're saying, yes, do this program, then we become, I think, accountable, maybe liable for what happens. And so I would really need to know that there was a larger education piece than just that just went by.
Sorry.
Okay, this piece you didn't show before.
So this
is the most important to me because there are biohazards and they're an issue and there are things in storm drains that you can get hurt on. And while I think it would be great, I agree with Councilmember Burton. I wish people would just be responsible. But if this is a way to help that, that's great. But I just want to ensure that if we do this, we don't become I don't put my city in jeopardy.
Sure. What will happen when a resident adopts a storm drain? They'll immediately receive an email, and this is what is included in the email, and it has some guidelines, basically telling a resident to never try to lift a storm drain, never get into the storm drain because it could be dangerous. If they see any biohazardous waste items, to don't pick them up and to call Public Works and we'll come clean up for them. We've asked them if they see giant clogs in the storm drain down underneath to call Public Works. So, you know, they become a sort of eyes for us to help us mitigate problems as they come up.
Councilmember Anderson.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate this, Clint. This is great, and what you're able to do with GIS has been incredible with all the, I know that with the odor webs page and the survey and this. And I just went and did a quick search a year ago, May 29th, 2018. There was a big rainstorm, and we had, our neighborhood has had flooding before. We've had a homeowner in my neighborhood whose basement is flooded, and it was a Sunday, and I think the day before Memorial Day, if I remember. And I went out because I knew there was some issues with the storm grates, and I go out there with my shovel, and one of my other neighbors that lived down the street from me, he was out with his shovel. We ended up over by Dorley Park in the rain, scraping the debris that was covering up the storm drains to get into there, so the water would get in there. So in a way, I've already adopted a couple storm drains, or at least I've already serviced them like I adopted them. So I think this is really exciting to be able to do this, and we do have a lot of flooding issues, or have had a lot of flooding issues in the city, and this will be a great way for people just to look out. And like Chad, I've got to go look where on my street is.
Mm-hmm.
But I know where it is by Dorley Park. So that's all I have. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Clint, for your hard work.
Councilmember Jacob.
Thank you, Mayor. Not to rain on anybody's parade, but I do fear a little bit the unintended consequence. What is my liability if I adopt a storm drain, yet I'm negligent in my adoption fatherhoodness, and I don't do a good job cleaning it off, and it does clog and somebody's house floods? Is that on me? Because by me adopting it and doing a bad job, I prevented somebody else who may have been a little more of a attentive adoptive parent to step in. Is there a liability issue for not just the city, for somebody going out there and hurting themselves with the cleaning off the storm drain, but for me, the storm drain adopter, if I don't do a good job and somebody's house floods, am I on the hook for that? Because I can see that coming back to me.
I don't speak legalese, but the residents do not sign a contract when they adopt a drain, so that would maybe
I think that's
be
a question
Mr.
worth
Wall.
looking at, council member, and I haven't been asked to consider that.
I'm just wondering if by doing this, do I become a kind of a de facto agent of the city?
Yeah.
And therefore, I'm kind of on the hook for.
You caused me to think of something. There's an act in Utah called the Utah Volunteer Service Act, and it defines when a city is and is not liable for the volunteer acts of residents. And there's a process that you go through in terms of having an application form and so forth, and then that clarifies the answer to your question. I'm not sure how that would apply to this. I've never looked at it, and I didn't review this, and it may be something we ought to look at.
I would be hesitant to I mean, I like the idea. It's fun and clever. I think two things need to be looked at: the liability issue for the individual adopting the storm drain, not just the city, but are we inadvertently creating a problem? And then the actual financial issue, because like Councilmember Lamb said, there is going to be some sort of, I think it was you, was it Dirk? I don't know. Somebody at that end of the dais said something about that there will be a cost of some kind associated with, staff time or whatever it might be. So I'd like to see those two things kind of brought back just for some more information. Otherwise,
And you
yeah,
know,
it's kind of fun.
if I might, Councilmember and Mayor, that's something we could look at because, you know, as you know, Utah, the Department of Transportation has a pretty expansive Adopt a Highway program. And I'd be really curious to talk to them and see how they've analyzed this. So we could look into that.
I mean, it's a good thought. I just don't know if anybody who adopted a highway and didn't do a good job of picking up the trash on the side of the road created a condition in which somebody could have a, you know, anyway. Maybe, it could be in there. And there's probably something that those highway adopters apply or sign or whatever to acknowledge that or to waive, you know, liability or whatever. So just my 2 cents.
Thank you, Clint.
Thank you.
Seeing no more discussion, anyone like to make a motion? Councilmember Lamb.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll make a motion. I'd like the motion to table this until we get more legal information of how it would legally go against the city or individuals and get some more information on that and then bring this back no later than the first meeting in July.
Councilmember Whitelock.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Lamb, a second by Councilmember Whitelock. Discussion to the motion. Seeing none, let's vote.
Mayor, could I just clarify one thing?
Sure.
I'll look at, I'm not comfortable, I'm not sure ethically I can give you an analysis of the liability to the resident, but I will certainly give you an opinion on the liability to the city.
Okay.
I'm not sure ethically I can opine upon the liability to a resident.
We'll be halfway through the storm season by the first meeting in July, so.
We'll get something out quickly.
So I'll amend that motion so that the city can look into the legal issues of the city, but not the citizen. Will that suffice?
And the second?
Yeah.
Okay. So Councilmember Jacob.
Thank you. Real quick, there could be a city liability through my concern as well. If the citizen is determined to be liable for not maintaining the storm drain as he adopted, he could turn around, if he's found liable, let's say of $30,000, just a round number that I pulled out of my head, I promise, of damages to a house that flooded because of a storm drain issue, he could turn around to the city saying, hey, I never would have gotten involved in this if you hadn't had the program. So this isn't my fault, this is the city's fault. It's not, you know, it was their idea, so.
We'll look at that too.
Councilmember McConaughey.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll be opposed to the motion as worded because the wording was the legal issues for city and specifically called out and not for the residents. I'd still like to, since we represent the residents, I'd still like to know both. So if the motion were reworded to be consider or bring us back findings of the legal issues and leave it open, I would be supportive. But specifically excluding legal issues surrounding residents, I would be opposed. Thank you.
Councilmember Lamb.
Thank you, Mayor. I think I brought that up because our lawyer specifically said that he couldn't look into the citizens, so that's my only reason for amending it, because the previous one did do for both, but now if I go back to the other one, that goes back to what he just said he can't do. So that's my only concern is, and that's why I amended it.
Let me come back with something and see if it's enough for you. I will look at the issue.
So with this being a motion and a second to move it, do we have to have a vote, or can we?
We need a vote.
Then let's vote.
Voice vote. Roll call or voice vote? And then roll call?
Do a roll call.
Mayor Riding?
Yes.
Councilmember Whitelock?
Yes.
Councilmember Anderson?
No.
Councilmember Lamb?
Yes.
Councilmember McConaughey?
No.
Councilmember Burton?
Yes.
Councilmember Jacob?
No.
The vote passes 4-3 in favor.
Business item 10E, C, discussion and possible action regarding ordinance 19-13, amending the 2009 West Jordan City Code, Title 13, zoning regulations, Chapter 5, establishment of zones, Article C regarding planned development zones, citywide applicability, City of West Jordan applicant, Larry Gardner. So we'll go to Scott.
Mayor, council, we would request that you pull this item. We're close, but we wanted to finalize some of the nuanced language. and we didn't want to bring it back until it was completely done for you.
Okay, so we'll regard this item as pulled by staff to a future date.
Yes.
So we're moved to item 11, remarks. So we'll start with anybody who wants to make remarks, please key up your mic. Councilmember Burton.
Thank you. My first set of remarks are, we had a discussion at one time about surplusing file cabinets and somebody from the city who wanted to purchase those file cabinets. And I learned after that discussion that the company who buys our surplusing has no desire to buy that file cabinets. So if we surplus file cabinets, we won't be able to sell them to the company that we normally surplus them to, so they'll probably be donated to DI, or they'd have to be discarded as trash. So, or recycled, thank you. So I think we may want to relook at that, and if we can sell them for a small amount, which is better than a zero amount, to an employee, we should see if there's a way we can find to make that work.
I'd ask Denise to look into that, because in the past, when we've had things that we didn't sell, we took them to the state warehouse, and the state sold them and then gave us a check back for whatever we, did that, so.
Actually, typically, we should be using a website called Public Surplus. They do a lot of sales of surplus items for government entities, and items will go very quickly. I will be working on that after the budget is done. Sorry, gotta prioritize.
Okay, Councilmember Jacob.
Thank you, Mayor. At the end of the last meeting, I had some thoughts about streamlining the agenda for future meetings, and I promised to keep this to less than 2 minutes. And some of those were implemented tonight. I really like it, having the Pledge of Allegiance right at the beginning, regardless of what the beginning is. Good idea. Citizen comment right at the beginning, I think a better idea. I would propose moving workshops to the end of the agenda. That way we're not constrained by any arbitrary timelines, and we can maybe talk a little longer. Instead of thinking, oh gosh, it's 6 o'clock and we gotta move on, and we still have a lot of questions about the budget, but gosh darn it, we can't talk about it anymore. So moving those to the end, public hearings up by citizen comments is a thought that I had, and putting, consent and then workshop at the end, it was my thought. It would give citizens a predictable time when they know that they're gonna be able to speak. They know that citizen comments are at the beginning, and if they're here at the beginning, they know they don't have to sit and wait for an hour of presentations and citizen and staff comments and all that other stuff, so. Just some thoughts that I had as far as streamlining the agenda, making it more predictable for more people, and just some thoughts.
Councilmember McConaughey.
Thank you, Mayor. I had similar thoughts to Councilmember Jacob. This is not the first time we've had badge pinning here, and everybody seems to be here ready to go at 5:30, not realizing that that's when we have the workshop. When we had all the police officers here, we had to juggle things around so that we could accommodate all those who were there for that. With the workshop, if it's intended to be just a 30-minute workshop, I'm okay leaving it at 5:30 to 6, and then just adding a section to the agenda stating that the regular council meeting starts at 6, and kind of highlighting that so they know when they need to be here. I think having everything start at 5:30 might be a little bit tight for folks who might work until 5 or 5:30. 6 o'clock is a reasonable time for them to get here. So if the idea is the workshop should just be open-ended as much time as we need, then okay, sure, I'd be comfortable moving that to the back. But if it's the idea 30-minute workshop, then let's just do the workshop from 5:30 to 6. Start regular council meeting at 6 and put the number there so that they know that's when they should be here. Thank you.
Councilmember Burton.
Since I didn't use up all my 2 minutes, I would like to.
Yeah, you've already done 2 minutes. Are you taking Chad's 2 minutes?
I'm taking Chad's. May I have 2 minutes, Chad?
30 seconds.
So I received an email forwarded to me from, anyway, there was an applicant in our city there was a resident in our city who got flooded in their basement, and they filed for the insurance, and I'm being timed. And when they filed for the insurance, the city denied their request. And I read the denial, and it just says we deny it, and it didn't give any reason for why it is. And I think we should be more workable with them so they know what the reason is we denied. So I would like to see us include a reason for the denials if we're going to deny someone's request for flood damage, so they know what the purpose is.
Okay, these 2 minutes are, everybody's taking 2 minutes and 2 minutes and 2 minutes and 2 minutes. McConaughey.
I was planning to make a motion, but I will.
Go ahead, please do. Okay, Councilmember Anderson.
Just real quick, just to echo what, and I mentioned it during comments at the beginning, I think we need to move away, and I'm just one council member. I think we need to move away from the terse, short, 1 or 2 sentences, no, you can't do this. Our policy is you can't do this, and I think if we did more explaining and put the policy in our communications with residents or stakeholders that are doing business with the city, I think we will have much better response and actually spend less HR time clarifying later. So that's all I want to say. Thanks, Mayor.
Councilmember Anderson.
I'll move to go into closed session to discuss character, professional competence, or physical or mental health of an individual, strategy session to discuss pending or reasonably imminent litigation, and strategy session to discuss the purchase, exchange, or lease of real property, including any form of water right or water shares, and adjourn from there.
Councilmember Lamb.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Anderson, a second by Councilmember Lamb. Discussion of the motion. Seeing none, let's vote.
Councilmember Burton,
Yes.
Mayor Whiting,
Yes.
Councilmember Jacob,
Yes.
Councilmember McConaughey, Councilmember Whitelock,
Yes.
Councilmember Lamb,
Yes.
Councilmember Anderson.
Yes.
Vote passes 7 in favor.
Look, it's before 8 o'clock.